If you're interested in learning how I launched Zim Excellence, then you're in luck. Sign up for my podcast workshop and learn how it's easier and more affordable than ever to start a podcast. Also, grab yourself a copy of my podcast resource guide, which covers industry terminology, suggested tech setup, in addition to countless free online resources to support your podcast journey. Just head to wongai.com/podcast creation. That's wongai.com/podcast creation. The link will also be down in the show notes. Now, let's start the show. Yo, welcome to the party. Hello, makadini salibonani. My name is Wongai, and you're listening to Zim Excellence, a weekly celebration of Zimbabwe's changemakers and trailblazers. So here's the secret, y'all. Zimbabweans are actually dope AF, and it's just time that we recognize it. So grab yourself a plate of sadza and grab that stony ginger beer, and let the party begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Zim Excellence. Today, my guest is someone who wears many hats. He is a musician and composer born in Harare and now based in Ibiza, Spain, where he is developing various music projects under his own record label, Runway Vertical Records. He is also a business marketing and branding consultant who helps creatives and entrepreneurs around the world succeed in today's fast-paced digital world. During the pandemic, he founded ZimXcite, a Zimbabwean culture fashion brand that promotes a fun spirit of inclusion and global diversity inspired by all things Zimbabwe. Also in development is African Astronauts, which is a multimedia project to help empower and unite Africans all around the world by providing a platform for Africans to tell their own stories. Please welcome Ryan Koriya.
What's up, everybody? Whoa, hey, ho. Nice to be here.
Yes. So, like I said, you wear many hats, and I know there are definitely some hats I missed off of the list. You are the truest example in this 2021 of being a multi-passionate. That's what I believe. How do you feel about that description, multi-passionate, that adjective?
I love that. I'm going to actually adopt that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
That's
some
great.
people say multi-hyphenate, but it's like, no, multi-passionate. It's just like
multi-passionate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you know why?
that's
Because
cute.
you've hit on the magic word. So I have different genres, right? So two genres in musically. One of them is acoustic folk music, but the micro niche I have coined is passion folk. And then the pop that I do, I call it passion pop. So multi-passion is just great because that's what I am. Ryan is a passionate individual, full stop. So whatever he's working on or whatever he's into, he's going to be passionate about it. And that can obviously be different things. That's what I really think is not so crazy an idea, to be honest, as a human being. I think we are multifaceted creatures, and it's okay to grow up being a goth at school and being into Nirvana, and then being a 25-year-old, and then being an accountant and going, that's totally what I'm passionate about. And then being in your 30s and going, actually, I'm now a hippie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as long as you're doing you, I say do you.
I'm just like, follow the wave of like what your intuition tells you to do, even if it doesn't make sense. Right. So one thing I did leave off this bio when I condensed it is you actually did the music for Cook-Off, which is Zimbabwe's first ever film on Netflix. But we'll get into that later. I always like to begin with talking about people's origin stories. So Ryan, you are a Zim Excellence superhero, because I'm a nerd and I like superhero analogies. And every superhero has their own origin story. You were born here in Harare, and now you live in Spain. I'd love it if you could share with us a little bit about your origin story so that the listeners and those unfamiliar with who you are can understand how you got from point A to point B. Take it away.
Oh my gosh. the Ryan Koriya origin story would probably have to be this crazy.
It starts with a trailer. It's like, dun, dun, this summer.
Exactly. This summer and for the next 17 summers, so we can fit everything in. Strap in, everybody. It's going to be quite a ride. How did this young boy from Harare, Zimbabwe, in the neighborhood of Belvedere, who went to Belvedere Junior School and struggled financially from the beginning, like school fees was an issue, get to the point where he's traveling around the world and playing music to many people and just bringing love and passion? How did he do that? I think the origin story really is that, like, I come from a born free, as we joke about it, right? Generation born in 1980, which is weird to say, like, Zimbabwe, 1980, and your birthday, 1980, from a perspective of growing up in a country that was so brand new and so full of hope and so full of diversity, and as we called ourselves, the Rainbow Nation. And I really will always appreciate that, being able to grow in a country where I went to school with people who race wasn't an issue. And my parents, it was very different. Our parents' generation didn't grow up like that. They grew up segregated for the most part. And that's a reality that really does help shape your future, you know, because we are the first generation of, for example, going to Prince Edward, right, which is my high school. And as an adjudicator, because I also adjudicate the National Institute of Allied Arts, the Eisteddfods. And so recently I went to the Eisteddfod as an adjudicator. And I remember I took some PE boys with me to this cello class from one of the guest adjudicators. And they were just vexed with me. They were like, "Sir, you just walk into the room," because we were late, and you just walk into this like little recital, you know, so with so much confidence, and like there's all these white people and you just carry yourself like, and I'm like, "What do you mean?" And then having a conversation with them and realizing that they can count how many white people are in Prince Edward with one hand. Now, when I grew up, it was so diverse in many ways. So that for me, I think is really interesting, is that I come from a pocket of Zimbabwean history that is quite unique unto itself. Origin story for Ryan Koriya, born in Harare at Mbuyane Hospital, as many of us were.
Legends only.
As many of us were. My first few years were in Southerton, which is a southern suburb in Harare. And my gran that's where she lived. And so my mom at that point, because my mom was young when she had me, like she had just turned 19. So we only moved into our home in Belvedere when she was 21 and when I was about 3. So my first years, I think, would have been in Southerton and then in Waterfalls, Parktown, where my dad's family were based. And then we had our own home. I remember being this kid who was always entertaining already. Like I used to like do all these accents for everybody. Hello, hello, and mind your language.
I love hello, hello.
Right?
Yeah.
And Mind Your Language was on TV, and I used to do all these very good Indian accents, making the whole family laughing so much, you know? So they always said Ryan was this entertainer, and you make us laugh, and you were a natural entertainer in that sense. So I think that's where it started. But that was all the acting first. But an uncle told me recently that he remembers me being a very young, and they put me in the back of their VW Beetle or whatever and go and, you know, drive me around, and I would know all the words to Phil Collins on the radio. Like, so apparently I don't have the memory, but apparently I was already into the beats and the music and singing. But my first real memory of really reacting to music is when I was probably about 3, 4, and I just remember thinking, I love this stuff. And the first song that really spoke to me, my heart in a way, funny enough, was the Rolling Stones. And it's weird because as we're recording this, they've just lost their drummer. Like Charlie Watts has literally passed, I think, over the last 24 hours. And that's so sad to hear, because those guys have been through a lot and have gone through a lot. And I've always been in such awe of them, because a lot of our pop stars, a lot of them didn't survive for very long. And these guys, they had a secret. Whatever it was, they were like going, you know? So a song called Angie really spoke to me. And I think it makes sense, because when I listen to it, I'm like, of course, it's got that soul vibe. It's got this emotion to it, and this like stuff that just really goes deep. So I really feel like that's my first strong reaction that I remember to music, and me going, I got to learn how to play this over and over again. And I did at that age. I remember I used to go and get the vinyl, put it on the record when my parents were at work, and I'd know how to put the needle on song number, whatever it was, and I'd play the song. So by grade 1, apparently my mom said that the school came to her and said, listen, your son is a little performer, yo. So we recommend you enlist him in speech and drama. We got a really great teacher, lessons. And so I started doing speech and drama lessons with Beryl Pollard was her name. And she would literally scribble and scratch all these poems with red ink and go, no, longer pause here and say this like that. So I had really good speech and drama training from very early on. And then I fell in love with music even more because we had this amazing school choir. And, you know, in assembly on a Wednesday or whatever it was, we had to go into the school hall as junior school kids and sing these cool songs and hymns and whatever. And we had an amazing choir mistress, Ava Rogers. Like, shout out to Ava Rogers. Like, a lot of people listening to this will know exactly who Ava Rogers is. And she's this incredible teacher who's literally taught most of us. Belvedere Junior School, Hartman House, and many other schools I know she's been involved with musically, Reps Theatre. She's done amazing things, music direction. She's a musician herself, a beautiful voice. She was in a girl group. I'm going to try and remember what they were called. Something Sisters. And they did amazing stuff. They did TV adverts. So she was literally at the helm and got, like, can you imagine, like hundreds of school kids to sing in unison as the music director playing the piano, assisted by Mrs. Marshall, I believe, was the other teacher I remember. And so for me, that's what I feel like. My origin story already began. I already knew I was into the arts because that's what I strongly resonated with and reacted to. So by the time I got to high school, I was able to start playing classical music. And that for me is, I think, a very good origin story. Form 1, Prince Edward High School, you know, you're there with your oversized blazer, you're looking at all these big testosterone, you know, led teenagers looking down at you, grunting, and you're just going, why am I here? I still remember, I want to share this story, my last day of junior school, when we used to sing the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed
I'm triggered.
Right? And then you get to Prince Edward. I won't bore you with the details, but it was a harrowing experience just to get there on time on the first day because the school bus was late. Zupco, thanks for getting us late. Anyway, you arrive and you're shoved into the front of this mass of, like, whatever it was, 1,300 boys. And you've got all these teachers staring down at you. And you're just like, have I landed in the army? I'm a bit intimidated here. Right? Yes, and then this is my first memory of Prince Edward in high school. Then all of a sudden, because everyone's silent, right? It's the first day of school of the year. You just hear a prefect go, stand! And then you just hear this shuffle of feet. And then Mr. Barnes is coming. The legendary Mr. Barnes is walking through the, you know, on the grass from his office to come and take the assembly. And then he arrives and he's like, morning, gentlemen. And you just hear this, morning, sir, rumbling at you. And you're there going, oh my God, intimidated. And then he says, let us say the Lord's Prayer. And then all the Form 1s start going, Our Father. And it was the most funniest thing ever. Because obviously, all these teenage boys, we don't, even Mr. Barnes said it. He didn't say, let us sing the Lord's Prayer. He said, let us say the Lord's Prayer. So everyone's just like, Our Father, who art in heaven, rumble, 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 blah, 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 blah. Thy kingdom come, blah, 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 blah. Amen. And you're just like, oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, high school. I'm in that state, obviously, you know, I'm like still new to high school. And one day they said, if you're interested in playing the violin, we have violins available and we have violin lessons available because we have a teacher who's doing an exchange gap year from England. So go and see her at break time at the school chapel. And I remember her name was Roxana Sarabi. And I went to see this woman and she let me hold a violin. And I was like, I'd love to play this. And I started playing the violin and I absolutely loved it to the point where every break time, I was in the music room playing the violin because I couldn't take it home. Obviously, it's expensive instruments and you had to prove your dedication. So the violin and I quickly got married, if that makes sense. I was spending every moment of free time I could with the violin at school. And because of that, I excelled because that was second term, Form 1. And at the end of first term, Form 2, I already got awarded half colors for music.
What does half colors mean?
Half colors is this really strange. I didn't even understand what it was, to be honest, at 14. But it's like an accolade that you get. It's almost like, you know, a valedictorian kind of award where people with colors are usually the sports captain for rugby because he's, you know, been exceptional at his craft. And so he gets a different blazer, the cream blazer, and you get like a nice tie that says you are an honors student at your craft, if that makes sense. So I got half of that to say, oh, this is already something that's very promising in this, you know, kid's career. And usually you would only get half colors when you were about Form 4, so 16, 17, colors tends to go to the older pupils. So for me, as a wet-nosed 14-year-old who just turned 14 in Form 2, it was weird. I was like, oh, I get to wear a different tie and the same blazer, but a different badge that says half colors or meant half colors. So it was a really, really amazing thing to get. But because I don't even know, I wish I could find out, but I don't even know if anyone's gotten colors that young ever in the school history, the 120 years of school history, because it's just not what you do. You get it when you're older. Maybe if you're 13 and you're a national chess champion or something, then you would get half colors, right? Or colors. So that's what happened beginning of Form 2. And for me, it just started to make me realize, oh, okay, I obviously have something here because the world around me seems to think so. And that same term, which is partly why I got the half colors, or most of the reason why, is because I had represented the school at the National Eisteddfod that we had. And I was the only pupil, if I remember correctly, in the entire school that got a gold certificate on honors, which means 90% plus. So I think that was like, wow, he's literally brought our only gold home. So of course he needs to be, rewarded for that because he's very talented, very promising, and it's only the beginning of his career, which is how I got on to get a scholarship from the school for cello and for violin at the conservatory, which is the Zimbabwe College of Music.
Oh, wow. Like, I didn't even know we had a Zimbabwean College of Music, but like that is super impressive. And that's how you're able to then keep affording music lessons as well and arts lessons.
Absolutely. And that's a big part of the story you bring up because true. First of all, the Zimbabwe College of Music is very important because it is what you would call the National Conservatory, because it is the National Institute for Learning Music, but it's also very importantly attached to and part of the Zimbabwe Ethnomusicology Center.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So they are one and the same, and that's important to know, and to note that there is that focus on ethnic music and the traditional instruments, and so that's all happening right there next door to the Rainbow Towers and the ZANU-PF headquarters, like that corner there, not far from Prince Edward actually. So
I love that you just brought in politics.
Not even like that's literally the building next door. I'm just name dropping the buildings. That's the neighboring, and then on the other side is the museum. What's it called? The National. Yeah, I think it's History Museum or whatever it is. Our museum is also there, National History Museum or something. So that's where it is for people to understand that there's actually that happening right there. And it's an important part of our cultural history.
Sweet. That's amazing. I'm going to take it back to something you said ages ago, but just so that no one tries to come at you and cancel you. So Ryan is allowed to do an Indian accent. I am not allowed to do an Indian accent. Why? Because Ryan is actually half Indian. Today is a great day to start your own podcast. Whether you have a message you want to share with the world, or you think, ooh, it could be fun to have my own talk show like one guy, getting started is easier than ever. Here at ZimXcellence, we use Buzzsprout, which is hands down the easiest, most affordable, and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Start for free and list your show on directories like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more within minutes. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping and teaching you to succeed. Just check out their YouTube videos. They are filled with tons of information. So join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Sign up today using the link in the show notes or go to wongai.com/podcast creation, and you'll get a $20 credit if you sign up for a paid plan. It also helps support the show. So go ahead, sign up for Buzzsprout, and keep me posted on your new podcast. Now back to the show.
So I am part Indian. It's not even half. It gets complicated because my grandfather was half Indian on my mother's side, and then my dad's side, Koriya, is actually from India. So our mixed heritage, and that's a whole other racial conversation. But like as coloreds, and that's the other thing, another story to talk about. But the word, I'll just say it now. The word colored for us as a community, it's something from my perspective is that we are proud to call ourselves colored because, as people of color, colored means you're mixed. And whereas, in America or the UK, it may mean something a bit more sort of derogatory, colored people are very proud of their identity. Say, no, I'm actually mixed, and I'm okay with that. I've got black in me. I've got Indian in me. In my case, other people have white. Other people have Chinese. We've got so many different mixes. So I've quite liked that term as to go, hey, you just have different ethnic backgrounds within your DNA, and that's totally cool. And I think that's rad. That's cool, no matter what kind of mix it is. So for me, that's a whole identity crisis I had growing up because I didn't know. I'm quite dark, and actually even that I refer to myself as a dark colored, which is people forget. I'm like, you've got to remember, Indian can be dark too,
Yeah,
Indian
literally.
people.
I mean, like we talk about Indian people, we talk about people in South America, we talk about Aboriginals, we all came from Africa at the end of the day. That's why it's like the motherland, the mother continent.
Cradle.
But
Oh yeah.
yes, but that I thought I would throw that out there before people were confused and being like, why is he allowed to do this? This is problematic. But I was like, no. Like, let's put it out there.
Yeah.
Brian's part Indian.
I hear you. And I respect that because I'm aware that because we just live and we just do. That's another conversation, I guess. But like we live in a world where it's just so easy to step wrongly, so to speak, according to someone's perspective or someone's belief. So for me, personally, I will say that if someone was making accents or doing stuff, I don't feel offended by that because I'm an actor. That's what actors do all the time. And like even in Zimbabwe, talking about the time we grew up in, again, my best friends, one was Hemel, who is an Indian. Another was Reg, who's a black Zimbabwean. Another was Daniel, who was a white Zimbabwean. And we all sat as thespians and we had accents all the time. And in class, we messed around with accents with each other. So for us, I have to say, we grew up in that where it was normalized. And I love that because it's almost like saying, let me just flip it a bit. It's almost like imagine growing up in a school and in a time where talking about mental health is just what you do. Hey, dude, how are you today? Really? Like, oh man, my dad beat my mom last night and I'm kind of really tripping and I don't feel good. Oh man, you know what? Let's meet at break time and let's talk about it. Let's just see if we can help you out, as opposed to that bravado of like, yeah, you're just a, sissy, and you got to like be act tough and you become the school bully or whatever. So imagine that was normal. You would be an adult going, oh, it's normal to talk about mental health and to be able to respect people's mental health and help them with it. So I feel like the accent thing could be similar for us because it's normalized for us,
I went to international school and that's a thing that we did all the time. But I guess it's like being outside of the bubble of international school and then being in the real world, you start to realize there is a small line between appreciation and just like slight microaggression, appropriation, or like mocking, if that makes sense. It all has to do with intention at the end of the day.
Exactly what I was about to say to you. Intention is the magic word here for a lot of things. In fact, I'll drop this as well. When it comes to things like any kind of, I guess you could call it prejudice, right? Racial, whatever it may be, gender, like it's all about intention. I could say very nice words to you, but the way I say them, you would sit there and go, what did he mean by that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I think. I think we need to not get distracted by the colorful flag everyone's waving, but actually think about the hand holding the flag. Like, let's go deeper here and say, okay, well, forget about what you're saying. Like, but what are you really saying or trying to say? I think that's the important thing out of everything we're talking about actually here.
So this might be a really broad question for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What does being Zimbabwean mean to you?
Wow. I will start by quickly going back because I do realize you asked a question I didn't answer. I said I started something I didn't finish, which was just quickly to do with the fact that you mentioned me getting a scholarship and being able to get lessons in the music world. That's the only reason I could do music, because coming from a family background which just money was always not necessarily an easy thing for us. My parents worked very hard and they did the best. In fact, we're lucky because my education, Prince Edward, even that was a privilege. Like, wow, I got to go to Prince Edward. Thank goodness it was a government school. It wasn't as expensive as some of the private colleges. So I am really lucky because of the scholarships and stuff. I got to pursue my passion, which absolutely I could not afford, or should I say my parents would have never could afford my lessons for music or any of these extracurriculars. So they were included in my school education, which I'm so, so grateful for. Prince Edward School is a big deal for me. It's allowed me to become who I am today. And going back to your question, being Zimbabwean, the words that come up are unique. I think that's the first one, because I feel like being a Zimbabwean means that you sit in a pocket in humanity where a lot of people just don't know what they're looking at, and they can't really get their heads around it, because what they know, or what they think they know, or what they perceive generally tends to be way outside of the court of what the Zimbabwean that's standing in front of them presents. So for me as a Zimbabwean, I am an individual within an entire country-wide culture. And so I'm not like every Zimbabwean, because we all have our uniqueness. But as a Zimbabwean culture, I feel like certain things come as a very likely part of the package. And that is, I find being Zimbabwean for me means I have this sense of community built into me that I really appreciate. I feel like there's a huge sense of humility that comes, which I think is a little too much, to be honest. I think Zimbabweans are the kind of people around the world, especially, that you will find doing incredible things right in front of you, and you have no idea they're doing them. And
Zim excellence.
There you go, right? Zim excellence. Like that's part of it. It's like, it's almost like you're so busy being Zim excellent that you're not really worried about, showing people or being, so we're not very showy. I think that's a very big part of being Zimbabwean in my eyes. And I feel like it's something that I'm actually trying to push and sort of pull, just move the needle a little bit, because if we could get just a little bit more a sense of belonging and less of that imposter syndrome, we would be far better off. So as a Zimbabwean in my early 40s now, that's what I'm trying to overcome, to go, you know what, I'm okay with taking the spotlight sometimes, or with compliments. And I've had to learn, because a lot of these things I ran away from for a long time. And in fact, one of the things is now it's like feeling this discomfort of going, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine growing up the way I did? Like, I was often in the spotlight and I wasn't comfortable. I was like, oh my gosh, no, forget about it. It's not about me. Like, and trying to run away. And part of that is a disservice, to the point where I'll give you a quick example. I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was there just for 2 weeks. I wanted to get out and be seen, make some connections and like just forward the career, because it's a very long journey I've been on, and I've had to do a lot of moving around, which is really not good, because you can't really grow anything if you have to keep moving. But I was there, and I love America. Whenever I'm there, things just happen, and I love their culture, that whole sort of believe in the idea and believe in talent, and I've always gotten positive, reactions there. So from a community / career point of view. So I was in Nashville, and there was this amazing singer who was on stage doing a Wednesday show, I believe. And she used to sing in Fleetwood Mac, because she was, I think, Stevie Nicks' replacement when Stevie Nicks was in rehab. And so,
oh my gosh, I'm freaking out.
Right. So, and she had an amazing voice. Her name is Becca Bramlett. So Becca's on stage, and I'm just like, wow, she's amazing. She was singing at B.B. King's club, and an amazing drummer. I remember CeeLo Green's drummer was her drummer, one of his drummers. And it was like it was a vibe. And I used to go in, I used to watch her. So I remember the drummer said to me one day, bro, you should go and ask her to sing, man, because that's the whole idea. We're going to get singers on stage, and it's still a new show, but we should, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, cool. But that Zimbabweanness in me, I was like, I'm a bit scared, to go and just invite myself on stage. I think that's the humility I'm talking about, where, how it is. We've all met those people, like, where you're just like, in fact, it happened on that trip where this guy who had his McCartney as his surname, I can't remember his first name, but he was like apparently related to it, but he's literally slid across the floor to me and said, what's up, dude? I'm Paul McCartney's nephew, and check out my car, dude. Like, I'm amazing. We should hang, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, opposite of what I'm about. So going to her was difficult, but I was like, hey, and she knew who I was because we'd been chatting. And I said, listen, I'd love to join stage with you at some point. She was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds good, but give us a few weeks because we're still trying to get our show together. And I was like, actually, I leave in a week. She's like, oh, really? That's a pity. You know what? I like you, Zimbabwe. So how about next week? We'll try and make it happen. Okay, so give me your phone. So I was like, okay, cool. I gave her my phone. I was like, okay, what is she doing? And then she's like, okay, I'm going to write in my email address and you send me some links so I can check you out. And then I'll see for next week. And I was like, sounds great. And then just very flippantly, she was just like, so are you any good? And my response was very quote unquote Zimbabwean in my sense of like, yeah, well, I try. And dude, she practically bit my head off. Like there were expletives, like there were F words were mentioned. And it was like, don't effing waste my time. Because do you know what I mean? There was that kind of reaction.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. And I knew what was happening because I've had to, as I said, address this and go, you know what? You've got to show up and not apologize for being who you are. So I knew that what was going on. So I did counteract that by saying, okay, listen, I'll be honest with you. Okay, that's just my personality. I'm not someone who's very showy, but of course, I think we would be amazing on stage together. I wouldn't be asking you otherwise. I am good at what I do. That's why I'm here. And then she was like, oh, okay, fine. You know, if she was African, that's what it would have been, the
kiss my teeth, yeah.
right. But she was like, maybe that look, it was the look of that, you know. She was like, okay, fine, give me your phone. And then she put her email address in, and then I emailed her, right? So that's an example for me of what I mean. Like, being Zimbabwean, it's just like this unpolished gem in many ways. And some of us have been lucky to get out there and do stuff. And I think that's another conversation altogether. But like, I've found that a lot of Zimbabweans who tend to excel internationally are the ones who were lucky enough to have some kind of heritage or ability to leave the country early and go and do their thing. Whereas I took 4.5 years after high school to get out of Zimbabwe. I was 23 when I could finally get a visa. I tried for 4.5 years of my life waiting to just get on my bus to life, you know? So I think it's been a long answer, but that kind of gives you an idea of what Zimbabwe and being Zimbabwean is for me. It's like kind of like this weird underdog, but I have a lot of faith in the underdog.
I'm getting two things. So the first thing I'm getting is there are so many layers to what you were feeling when you had that moment in Nashville. As artists, we're already fighting imposter syndrome, and then that being a Zimbabwean thing as well. So it's like a very layered, where you're like, which one is it right now? Is it both? Is it this one? Is it more this one? And then the other thing I'm getting is that I also think from a cultural perspective, the other reason why we're not showy is that then we don't want to jinx it, because it's like someone could curse us or like be jealous enough or hate us so much they'll go to Nanga or something or whatever. So I feel like there's also that thing of like, oh, I can't tell people because then they'll want something from me or they'll not want to support me, which isn't the best mindset to have as an artist, because then you keep thinking that like people are out to get you and the world is out to get you and you're just very like shut in, which I think as a society, that's something that we need to work on. We need to work on supporting each other more. And that's one of the reasons for Zim Excellence, because I always find that a lot of us are, whether we're in Zimbabwe or outside Zimbabwe, we're ignored for so long until, let's say, Ryan's won an award, the cook-off is on Netflix or something. And then suddenly it's like, oh, yes, he did it. Apinda, he's waving the flag. He's amazing. But it's like, but where were you for Ryan when he was like, you know, doing all these amazing things in high school, or like when he was busking in London or whatever? I'm making up examples, but you know what I mean? We don't support each other enough. I'm trying to be like the Nigerians who are like, Naja no de carry last. Like Nigerians are like, if Nigerians and South Africans, these are like the two main groups of people. Again, this is me generalizing, but I find that when they discover another person is Nigerian or South African, it's like instantly, oh, we're family. Instantly, oh, we're friends. Oh, I support you. Oh, let me introduce you to some more Nigerians, some more South Africans. Like, oh, this is, you know. But Zimbabweans is like, gonna keep it on the down low. Like, you know, I'm gonna like pretend I don't exist. And that's a trap I've also fallen for, like, for years. And I'm just, it took me, I think it was 3 years ago, I realized this is something that I'd done. I'm like, oh, this is why I have no clue what's happening in the Zimbabwean community, because I've been hiding from it for so long. But again, it's also layered with the fact, and this is something that you'd also relate to, the whole identity crisis and never feeling Zimbabwean enough. I say this in air quotes for the listeners, but yeah.
Wow. It's a trifle, you know. When you talk about layers, I'm like, no, there's some layers in there. And like, you bring up so many good points, because that's exactly why I started African Astronauts. It's designed to do that. And it's that picture of going, you know what, African astronauts is this idea of not just Zimbabweans, but of course it's coming from me as a Zimbabwean going, I'm an astronaut, I'm out in the world. I had, you know, the ability, thank goodness, and the guts to leave home to go and reach for greater things. And I'm out in space. I actually have a song called Drowning in Space, because I'm like, I'm in space and I'm just like, it's just me out here. And I'm like, where's everybody? So I've got to learn how to make a space station. I've got to learn how to make space food. I've got to learn how to make all sorts of stuff. But then a few clicks that way is another Zimbabwean astronaut doing something similar. And like you're saying, it's this thing of, we come from this weird dichotomy where you learn to go, you know what, I've tried to get out there and to be vulnerable and ask for help, and I got burnt so many times, and people are not always out for your benefit. So I'm just going to keep my cards close to my chest and just get on with it, and I'm going to build my space station. But then we have thousands of people now building different space stations unnecessarily, because if we had all built one, we'd already have our own international space station. So I feel like that's part of what I'm also trying to encourage. Again, talking about the mental health, which I've referenced, it's like if people can come out and say, you know what, being vulnerable and sharing is just what you've got to do. And yes, you're going to get hurt. And yes, people are going to be, and that's how you get better again. Oh, right. I don't actually share stuff with Ningi because they're not here for my best interest. But I've now found my 3 best friends who got my back, and they're my cheerleaders, and I always go to them. And now because of that, we've got our little Zim excellence thing going on, but I know who's in there because I wouldn't have found them if I wasn't putting myself out there, like you said. So for me, that's always been the way to go. It's like, yes, it's scary. Same with me. I got on a plane with like a few $100s to go and live in England with no real safety net, but I'd rather do that than stay at home and go, well, I don't know who's going to have my back, and I don't know. I just had to go and busk and make it happen. So that's my message, I think, is that if we want to change the narrative, that's one of the things I think we should change. And I do even do things like challenge some of our elders. There's a wonderful sort of memory I have of being in Victoria Falls with one of my friends. She had just moved back from America. Amazing woman, Meredith. And she was sitting with me at the Backpackers Lodge, and we were chatting. And then this older local gentleman came over, and he was like, Muzukuru, what? And he was talking to me about her right in front of her. And I was like, and he literally was like, is this your Mexicana? What? And I was like, sorry, Mdara, she's right here. You can ask her yourself. Like, but he was doing that thing of like, hey, Sissy, do you want to be my wife? And trying to ask for, and I was like, and I challenged him on that. I'm like, I get you got to respect your elders, but I was like, there's certain things I will not condone. And so I'm also about that, to go, our heritage and our culture, there's a lot of amazing stuff that's in there, but we need to run the virus cleaning software and extract the human software that is holding us back. And some of it is this misogyny, and some of it is this thing of going, well, if I do nothing, I'm safer that way. It's like, no, nothing ever gets done that way. You've got to be out there. And of course, we're smart, we're resilient. So that's covered, but also be available and be able to take the punches. Because, any of our heroes right now on the big screen, they'll all tell you their stories. And I mean, Sylvester Stallone is a great example. He had to sell his dog. Remember that story that went around? Because he had to sell his dog. And the script for Rocky, they wanted to give him peanuts. And he was like, no, it's my script and I'm going to be in it. But he had to go through that crap. Stallone, Schwarzenegger, all these interesting people. So why not? Don't be afraid of it. Go and it's like, choose your battles, choose your pain, because that's what I'm doing. I've been homeless. I've been traveling around the world with no money. I've been hustling, but I'm choosing my hustle because the reward is not going to be life-changing. It's going to be, for me, multi-generational changing.
My friends, I hope you enjoyed part 1, but before you go ahead and click play on part 2, please, please, please go ahead, click that subscribe button, rate, review, and once you're done, meet me back for part 2.